Marcus Reed stared at the message on his ship's communication screen for the third time. The words hadn't changed, but he still couldn't believe them. Captain William Torres was dead. The man who had taught him everything about flying cargo ships. Between the outer colonies was gone, killed in a transport accident near the Centauri system. Marcus rubbed his tired eyes and looked around his small cargo ship. The Lucky Star wasn't much to look at, but it was home. He had been flying freight. Runs for 5 years now, ever since Bill had helped him get his pilot's license. They had lost touch when Bill took that big contract in the Outer Rim territories. That was 3 years ago. The message said there would be a reading of Bill's will on New Geneva Station. Marcus had never thought about Bill having a will. The old pilot had always seemed too tough to die, too stubborn to leave anything behind. But apparently he had left something. And somehow, Marcus was mentioned in it. 2 days later, Marcus sat in a small office on New Geneva Station. The layer, a thin man named Roberts, read through the will in a boring voice. Most of it was legal talk that Marcus didn't understand. But then Roberts said something that made Marcus sit up straight. To Marcus Reed, I leave my ship, the Wanderer, all my savings, and the care of my bonded companion, Lyra of the Valerian system. Marcus blinked. Bonded companion? What does that mean? Roberts looked uncomfortable. Well, Mr. Reed, it appears Captain Torres was in a legal relationship with a Valerian refugee. Under Galactic Refugee Protection Acts, such bonds are legally recognized. You are now responsible for her care and well-being. Wait, Marcus sighed, holding up his hands. You're saying Bill left me a person? Like an actual person? A Valerian, yes. She's currently living in the residential sector of the station. The bond is ... Well, it's complicated. Valerian customs are quite different from human ones. Marcus felt his head spinning. He had come here expecting maybe to inherit some tools. Or maybe a small amount of money. Instead, he was getting a ship, savings, and apparently an alien woman. This was way more than he had bargained for. An hour later, Marcus stood outside apartment 2847 in the residential sector. He had been standing there for 10 minutes, trying to work up the courage to knock. What was he supposed to say? Hi, I'm Marcus. I inherited you from Bill. That sounded terrible. Finally, he knocked. Soft footsteps came from inside, and then the door opened. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. The woman standing before him was the most beautiful being he had ever seen. She was tall and graceful, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow softly in the dim hallway light. Patterns of silver light moved slowly across her skin like gentle waves. Her hair was long and white, almost silver, and her eyes were large and deep purple. She wore a simple white dress that seemed to flow around her like water. You must be Marcus, she said, and her voice was like music. Bill told me about you many times. I am Lyra. Marcus tried to speak, but no words came out. He just stood there, staring like an idiot. Lyra smiled, and the silver patterns on her skin brightened a little. Please, come in. We have much to discuss. The apartment was small but comfortable. Lyra had decorated it with strange, beautiful objects that seemed to be made of crystal and light. She moved around the room like she was dancing, preparing tea with smooth, flowing movements. I know this must be very strange for you, Lyra said as she handed him a cup of tea. Bill explained human customs to me. You do not have bonding traditions like my people do. Marcus finally found his voice. I'm sorry, but I don't understand. What exactly is this bonding thing? The lawyer said it was legal, but what does it mean? Lyra sat down across from him, her purple eyes serious. Among my people, the Valerians, bonding is a sacred connection between two souls. It is deeper than your human marriage. When two beings bond, they become part of each other. They share thoughts, feelings, and life force. And you were bonded to Bill? Yes, Lyra said softly. When my world was destroyed, I was alone and lost. Bill found me and offered to bond with me, to give me an anchor in this universe. He was a good man, Marcus. He saved my life. Marcus set down his teacup. I'm sorry about your world, but I have to ask, what happens now? I don't know anything about bonding or Valyrian customs. I'm just a cargo pilot. Lyra's expression was gentle but firm. The bond does not simply disappear when one partner dies. It must be transferred to someone else, or I will fade away. Bill chose you to be my new bond partner. But I didn't choose this, Marcus said, feeling panic rising in his chest. No offense, but I don't know you. I don't know if I'm ready for this kind of responsibility. I understand, Lyra said. Bill told me you were a good man, but also a careful one. You do not have to accept the full bond immediately. But please, allow me to stay with you. Let me prove that I can be helpful, that I am not just a burden. Marcus looked at her sitting there, this beautiful alien woman who had lost everything and was now asking him to be her lifeline. He thought about Bill, who had always been there for him when he needed help. Maybe this was Bill's way of asking for one last favor, okay? Marcus said finally. I can't promise anything about this bonding thing, but you can come with me. We'll figure it out as we go. Lyra's smile was brighter than the stars outside the station's windows. Thank you, Marcus. I will not disappoint you. As they talked through the evening, Marcus learned more about Lyra and her people. The Valyrians had been an ancient race, wise and peaceful, living in harmony with the forces of the universe. But a cosmic disaster had destroyed their homeworld, scattering the survivors across the galaxy. Lyra was one of the last of her kind. When it was time to leave, Marcus showed Lyra to the Wanderer. The ship was much larger than his old Lucky Star, with comfortable living quarters and advanced systems. As they walked through the ship together, Marcus began to think that maybe this arrangement wouldn't be so bad after all. But as he lay in his bunk that night, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just changed in ways he couldn't even begin to understand. 2 weeks into their journey together, Marcus was beginning to realize that having Lyra aboard the Wanderer was nothing like he had expected. She wasn't just a passenger or even a crew member. She was something entirely different, something that challenged everything he thought he knew about relationships and partnerships. Every morning, Marcus would wake to find Lyra already up, moving through a series of graceful exercises that she called harmony forms. She would stand in the ship's small cargo bay, her body flowing through movements that seemed to dance with the vibrations of the ship itself. The silver patterns on her skin would pulse and swirl in rhythm with her movements, creating a light show that was both beautiful and hypnotic. It helps me stay connected to the life force of the ship, she explained when Marcus asked about it. All things have energy, Marcus. Ships, stars, people. My people learned long ago how to feel these energies and work with them. Marcus didn't understand it, but he couldn't argue with the results. Since Lyra had been aboard, the ship's systems had been running smoother than ever. She seemed to know when something was wrong before the diagnostic systems even registered a problem. The engine's harmonic frequency is shifting, she would say, and sure enough, an hour later the computer would alert them to a minor calibration issue. The navigation system feels tired, she would mention, and Marcus would discover that the star charts needed updating. It was uncanny and more than a little unsettling. Marcus was used to relying on instruments and experience. Lyra seemed to rely on something much more mysterious, their first real cargo. Run took them to the mining colony on Kepler 442b. It was a routine job, transporting processed metals to the industrial stations in the inner system. But as they approached the planet, Marcus noticed something odd. The other cargo ships are staying away from the northern shipping lanes, he observed, studying the traffic patterns on his screen. Lyra, who had been quietly meditating in the co-pilot's seat, opened her eyes. There is a disturbance in the energy flows, she said. Something dangerous lurks in that region. Marcus checked his instruments, but they showed nothing unusual. The scanners don't detect anything. Your scanners cannot see what I can see, Lyra said gently. Trust me. Marcus, take the southern route. Marcus hesitated. The southern route would add 3 hours to their journey, and time was money in the cargo business. But something in Lyra's voice made him change course. Later, they learned that a massive solar flare had erupted from the systems. Creating a radiation storm in the northern shipping lanes. 3 ships that had ignored the warnings had been damaged. Marcus and Lyra had avoided the danger completely. "How did you know?" Marcus asked as they unloaded their cargo. "I felt the star's distress," Lyra replied simply. "It was building up pressure, ready to release. My people were always sensitive to such things." That night, as they shared dinner, in the ship's small galley, Marcus found himself really looking at Lyra for the first time. Not just her obvious beauty, but the way she moved, the way she listened, the way she seemed to understand things that he couldn't even perceive. "Tell me about your world," he said, "about your people." Lyra's expression grew sad, but she began to speak. Valeria Prime was a world of crystal cities and floating gardens. We lived in great spires that reached toward the stars, and our cities were connected by bridges of light. We had learned to harness the energy of our sun and the cosmic forces that flow through space. "It sounds incredible," Marcus said. "What happened to it?" "A dark star," Lyra said quietly. "A massive object that we could not detect until it was too late. It passed through our system and disrupted everything. The gravitational forces tore our world apart, our sun went nova. Everything was destroyed in a matter of hours." "How many of your people survived?" "Very few. Perhaps a dozen scattered across the galaxy. We had colonies on other worlds, but most were destroyed as well. I was on a trading mission when it happened. I watched my homeworld die from a distance, helpless to do anything." Marcus felt a pain in his chest as he imagined the horror of watching your entire civilization disappear. "I'm sorry," he said. "I can't imagine what that must have been like." "The pain was unbearable," Lyra said. "I wanted to die. I drifted through space for months, not caring if I lived or died. Then Bill found me. He was transporting refugees from another disaster, and he saw my ship floating dead in space. He brought me aboard and ... he listened to me. He understood my pain, and that's when you bonded with him?" "Yes, the bond saved my life. It gave me a reason to continue existing. Bill was not Valerian, but he had a good heart. He was strong enough to share my burden." Marcus studied her face, seeing the grief and loss that she carried. "And now that burden is supposed to be mine?" "Only if you choose to accept it," Lyra said. "I will not force this upon you, Marcus. But I hope that in time you will understand that the bond is not just a burden, it is also a gift." Over the following days, Marcus began to see what she meant. Lyra's presence on the ship was changing him in ways he hadn't expected. She was teaching him to see the universe differently, to feel the rhythms and energies that connected all things. When they encountered a dangerous asteroid field, Lyra guided him through it with an intuitive understanding of the rock's movements that no computer could match. When they needed to make a difficult repair to the ship's engines, she seemed to know exactly which component was failing before Marcus even ran the diagnostics. But it wasn't just her abilities that were affecting him. It was her presence itself. Marcus had always been a loner, preferring the solitude of space to the complications of relationships. But Lyra's quiet wisdom and gentle strength were drawing him out of his shell. She would sit with him in the evenings, sharing stories of her people and listening to his tales of life as a cargo pilot. She never judged him or made him feel foolish for his simple dreams and modest ambitions. Instead, she helped him see that his work connecting the scattered colonies was important, that he was part of something larger than himself. "You carry more than just cargo," she told him one night as they watched the stars through the ship's observation window. "You carry hope, connection, life itself between the worlds. That is noble work." Marcus had never thought of his job that way before. He was just a pilot moving goods from one place to another. But through Lyra's eyes, he began to see himself as part of the great web of relationships that held human civilization together. As they continued their journey, Marcus found himself looking forward to their conversations, to the way Lyra would smile when he told a joke, to the gentle way she would correct his pronunciation of Valerian words. He was beginning to understand that the bond she spoke of wasn't just some alien custom. It was a connection between souls, a joining of two beings who could make each other stronger. But he also noticed the way other humans looked at them when they stopped at stations and colonies. Some were curious, some were envious, and some were suspicious. They saw a human man with a beautiful alien woman and made assumptions about their relationship that weren't always kind. "They think you're taking advantage of me," Lyra said one day after they had encountered particularly hostile looks at a trading post. "Are they right?" Marcus asked. "I mean, I inherited you? I didn't choose you, and you didn't choose me. Maybe this whole arrangement is unfair to both of us." Lyra was quiet for a long moment. Then she placed her hand on his arm, and Marcus felt a strange tingling sensation, as if electricity was flowing between them. "Choice is not always about the beginning," she said softly. "Sometimes it is about what you do with what you have been given. Bill chose to save me. I chose to bond with him. Now we must choose what to do with the connection that fate has given us." Marcus looked into her purple eyes and felt something shift inside him. For the first time since this whole strange journey had begun, he realized that he was beginning to care about Lyra not as an obligation or a responsibility, but as a person, as a partner, as something more. And that realization both thrilled and terrified him. The trouble started in the Titan's rest system, 3 months after Lyra had joined Marcus aboard the Wanderer. They were carrying a cargo of rare minerals to the orbital refineries when the ship's sensors detected an unusual energy signature ahead of them. "What is that?" Marcus asked, studying the readings. The display showed a massive storm of electromagnetic energy stretching across their flight path, crackling with dangerous lightning that could fry a ship's electronics in seconds. "It's a space storm," Lyra said, her voice tight with concern. "A very large one. The energy patterns are chaotic, angry. We should not try to pass through it." Marcus checked his star charts. The storm was directly between them and their destination, and it was growing larger by the hour. Going around it would take days, maybe weeks, and their cargo was time-sensitive. The mining company was expecting delivery within 48 hours. "We might be able to punch through it if we're fast," Marcus said. "The Wanderer has good shielding." "No," Lyra said firmly. "This storm is different. It has a malevolent energy, like it's alive and hunting. I can feel its hunger." Marcus looked at her, seeing the fear in her purple eyes. In the months they had been together, he had learned to trust her instincts about such things. But he also knew that missing this delivery would cost them the contract, and money was getting tight. "Maybe we could try the edge," he suggested. "Stay just outside the storm's main body, but cut through a smaller tendril. It might save us some time." Lyra closed her eyes and seemed to listen to something only she could hear. After a moment, she nodded reluctantly. "Perhaps, but we must be very careful. And if I tell you to turn back, you must do so immediately." Marcus agreed, and they began their careful approach to the storm's edge. The Wanderer shuddered as they entered the outer energy field, and the lights flickered as electromagnetic pulses washed over the ship. Marcus kept his hand steady on the controls, fighting to maintain course as the storm tried to push them off track. "It's not too bad," he said, trying to sound confident. "We can handle this." But as they moved deeper into the storm, things got worse. The energy pulses became stronger, more frequent. The ship's systems began to overload, one by one. First, the navigation computer went offline, then the communication array, then the main sensors. "Marcus," Lyra said, her voice strained, "something is wrong. The storm is ... It's focusing on us. It's trying to trap us." Marcus looked at the readings and felt his heart sink. The storm was indeed changing, forming a wall of energy around them. Every direction they tried to turn, the electromagnetic field grew stronger, pushing them back toward the center of the storm. "We're caught," he said. "The storm has us." The ship lurched violently as a massive energy bolt struck their starboard side. Sparks flew from the control panels, and the lights went out completely. In the darkness, Marcus could hear the sound of systems failing all around them. "Emergency power," he called out, but nothing happened. The backup systems were fried too. Then, in the darkness, he saw a soft glow. Lyra was standing beside him, and the silver patterns on her skin were shining brighter than he had ever seen them before. The light was warm and comforting, pushing back the darkness. "Give me your hand," she said. Marcus reached out without thinking. And the moment their fingers touched, everything changed. Suddenly, he could feel what Lyra was feeling. The storm wasn't just a random weather phenomenon. It was a living thing, a cosmic entity that fed on the energy of passing ships. It had been waiting for them, hunting them, but he could also feel something else. Through Lyra's connection to the cosmic forces, he could sense the storm's patterns. Its rhythm, its weak points. The knowledge flowed into his mind like water, filling him with understanding he had never possessed before. "I can see it," he whispered. "I can see how it moves." "Yes," Lyra said, her voice echoing strangely in his mind. "We are connected now. Use what you feel. Guide us through." Marcus turned to the controls, but he wasn't flying blind anymore. Through his connection with Lyra, he could sense the storm's movements before they happened. He could feel the electromagnetic pulses building up before they struck. He could see the safe paths through the chaos that his instruments never would have detected, working together. They began to navigate through the storm. Marcus's hands moved on the controls with a precision he had never possessed before, while Lyra's cosmic awareness guided them through the maze of energy. They moved like dancers, perfectly synchronized, each knowing what the other would do before they did it. The storm fought them every step of the way. It sent massive lightning bolts after them, tried to trap them in whirlpools of magnetic force, created false paths that led to destruction. But Marcus and Lyra moved through it all, their minds linked, their actions perfectly coordinated. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, they burst through the storm's outer edge into clear space. The ship was battered and scarred, many of its systems damaged, but they were alive. Marcus collapsed into his pilot's seat, exhausted. The connection with Lyra had been intense, overwhelming. He had felt her memories, her emotions, her pain and joy all mixed together with his own. It had been beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "What just happened?" he asked. Lyra sat down beside him, her skin patterns slowly fading back to their normal gentle glow. "We bonded," she said simply. "Partially, at least. In the moment of crisis, when we both needed each other to survive, our souls touched." Marcus looked at her, seeing her with new eyes. He could still feel an echo of the connection, a whisper of her thoughts and feelings at the edge of his consciousness. It was like having a second heartbeat, a second voice in his head. "Is this what it's like for your people?" he asked. "This connection?" "A full bond is much deeper," Lyra said. "But yes, this is how it begins. Two souls recognizing each other, choosing to share their strength." Marcus thought about what he had felt during their flight through the storm. The sense of unity, of being part of something larger than himself. It had been unlike anything he had ever experienced. "It's incredible," he said. "I could feel everything you were feeling, see everything you were seeing. It was like we were one person." "In a way we were," Lyra said. "That is the power of the bond. It allows two beings to become more than they could ever be alone." They spent the next few hours repairing the ship's damaged systems and limping toward their destination. But Marcus found that he couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. The connection with Lyra had shown him possibilities he had never imagined. That night, as they sat in the ship's small galley sharing a meal, Marcus found himself really looking at Lyra for the first time. Not as an obligation or a responsibility, but as a person he was beginning to care about deeply. "Tell me about the bond," he said. "What would it mean if we chose to make it permanent?" Lyra's expression grew serious. "It would mean we would be partners in every sense of the word. We would share our thoughts, our feelings, our very life force. We would be connected across any distance, able to have each other's pain and joy. It would be a commitment deeper than any human marriage. And if one of us died, the other would feel it, would grieve, but would not necessarily die. A bonded pair can survive the loss of their partner, though it is very painful. It is not like the temporary bonds I formed to stay anchored. This would be a true joining of souls." Marcus thought about this. In the months since Lyra had joined him, his life had become richer, more meaningful. She had shown him wonders he never would have seen, taught him to understand the universe in ways he never would have imagined. She had become not just his companion, but his partner in every sense of the word. "I've been thinking," he said slowly, "about us, about what we're doing here. When this whole thing started, I thought I was just helping out a friend by taking care of his responsibility. But it's not like that anymore, is it?" Lyra shook her head. "No, it is not. We have become something new, something that neither of us expected. So what do we do now?" "We choose," Lyra said simply. "We decide what we want our future to look like, together." Marcus reached across the table and took her hand. The moment their skin touched, he felt that warm, tingling sensation again, the echo of their connection during the storm. But this time, it didn't frighten him. It felt like coming home. "I choose you," he said. "I choose us." Lyra smiled, and the silver patterns on her skin began to glow softly. "And I choose you, Marcus Ridd. I choose to bond with you, to share my life with you, to become part of your soul as you become part of mine." As they sat there holding hands, Marcus felt the connection between them growing stronger. He could sense Lyra's thoughts and feelings more clearly now, could feel her love and trust and hope for their future together, and he knew that she could feel the same from him. They were no longer just a human and an alien thrown together by circumstance. They were partners bonded by choice and strengthened by love. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The universe suddenly seemed full of infinite possibilities. News traveled fast in the outer colonies, and word about Marcus and his beautiful Valyrian companion spread through the shipping networks like wildfire. Most of the talk was harmless gossip. Spacers loved to share stories about the unusual things they encountered in their travels. But not all the attention was innocent. Harrison Vex heard about them 3 weeks after their adventure in the space storm. He was sitting in his private office aboard his luxury yacht, the Crimson Hunter, when one of his information brokers brought him the report. "A human cargo pilot with a bonded Valyrian companion," the broker said, sliding a datapad across Vex's desk. "They've been spotted at several stations in the Outer Rim. The woman is apparently quite striking." Vex studied the images on the datapad with growing excitement. The photos were grainy, taken from security cameras at various space stations, but they showed enough. The woman was definitely Valyrian, with the characteristic luminescent skin and graceful movements, and she was magnificent. "A living Valyrian," Vex whispered, his eyes gleaming. "I haven't seen one in over 5 years." Vex was a collector of rare and beautiful things. His yacht was filled with artifacts from dead civilizations, exotic creatures from distant worlds, and treasures that most people could only dream of owning. But his true passion was collecting sentient beings. The rarer and more beautiful, the better. He had been hunting the surviving Valyrians for years. Their psychic abilities made them incredibly valuable, both as curiosities and as potential sources of power. He had managed to acquire 3 of them over the past decade, but they had all died in captivity, unable to survive without their bonds to sustain them. This one was different. This one was already bonded to someone. That meant she was stable, healthy, and at the peak of her abilities. She would be the crown jewel of his collection. "Find out everything you can about this pilot," Vex ordered. "His roots, his schedule, his weaknesses. I want that Valyrian, and I want her alive." Meanwhile, Marcus and Lyra were completely unaware of the danger hunting them. They were 3 months into their new life as bonded partners, and things were going better than Marcus had ever imagined. Their partial bond had grown stronger over time, allowing them to work together with an efficiency that amazed everyone who saw them. They had taken on more challenging cargo runs, navigating dangerous routes that other pilots avoided. With Lyra's ability to sense cosmic disturbances and Marcus's skill at the controls, they could handle jobs that would have been impossible for either of them alone. Their reputation was growing, and with it, their income. Marcus had never made so much money in his life. More importantly, he had never been so happy. "We should celebrate," Lyra said one evening as they finished unloading a particularly profitable cargo of rare crystals. "We have been working very hard lately," Marcus smiled at her. Even after all this time, her beauty still took his breath away. But it was more than just her appearance that drew him to her. It was her wisdom, her strength, her gentle way of seeing the world that made everything seem more meaningful. What did you have in mind? He asked. There is a nebula not far from here, Lyra said. The Andromeda Gardens. My people used to travel there for meditation and renewal. I would like to show it to you. They changed course and headed toward the nebula. As they approached, Marcus saw why the Valyrians had been drawn to this place. The nebula was a vast cloud of colorful gas and dust, swirling in patterns that seemed almost alive. It was beautiful beyond description. It's incredible, Marcus breathed as they drifted through the outer edges of the nebula. The energy here is very pure, Lyra said. It reminds me of home. They spent the day exploring the nebula, marveling at its beauty. Lyra showed Marcus how to feel the energy currents that flowed through the gas clouds, and he began to understand why her people had been so connected to the cosmic forces, but their peaceful interlude was shattered when the ships' proximity alarms began screaming. 3 ships approaching fast, Marcus said, checking his sensors. They're not responding to our hails. Lyra's expression went pale. I sensed darkness from them, malevolent intent. They mean to harm us. The first ship opened fire without warning. Energy bolts streaked past the Wanderer, and Marcus threw the ship into evasive maneuvers. But the attackers were fast and well armed. They seemed to know exactly how to cut off his escape routes. They're hurting us, Marcus realized. Trying to force us toward that asteroid field. It's a trap, Lyra said. They want to disable us, not destroy us. They want to take us alive. The battle that followed was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. The attackers were skilled pilots, but they were also predictable. They relied on their instruments and their tactics, following patterns that could be anticipated. Marcus and Lyra fought differently. Their bond allowed them to move as one, to anticipate each other's actions without speaking. When Marcus needed to make a sharp turn, Lyra was already bracing for it. When she sensed an attack coming from a particular direction, Marcus was already moving to avoid it. There, Lyra said, pointing to a gap between 2 asteroids. If we can reach that passage, we can lose them in the field. Marcus didn't hesitate. He dove toward the gap, the Wanderer weaving between the massive rocks with impossible precision. The attackers followed, but they couldn't match the perfect coordination that the bond gave. Marcus and Lyra, one of the pursuing ships, clipped an asteroid and spun out of control. The second ship fell behind, unable to keep up with Marcus's reckless flying. But the third ship, the largest and most heavily armed, stayed with them. He's good, Marcus said, watching the ship match his every move. Whoever's flying that thing knows what he's doing. The chase continued deeper into the asteroid field. The pursuer fired continuously, trying to disable the Wanderer's engines without destroying the ship. Several shots came dangerously close, and Marcus felt sweat beading on his forehead as he pushed the ship to its limits. Then Lyra did something unexpected. She closed her eyes and reached out with her mind, extending her consciousness toward their pursuer. Marcus felt her mental probe through their bond, and he was amazed at what she discovered. The pilot is not human, she said. He's a Corvin mercenary. I can sense his thoughts. He's been hired to capture us alive. The one who hired him wants me specifically. Who would want to capture you? Marcus asked. Someone who collects rare beings, Lyra replied, her voice filled with disgust. I have heard whispers of such a person. A human who trades in sentient lives. Marcus felt anger burning in his chest. The idea of someone wanting to cage Lyra, to treat her like a possession, made him furious. Through their bond, Lyra felt his rage and was both touched and concerned by its intensity. We need to get out of here, Marcus said. Can you sense a way through the field? Lyra nodded and extended her awareness, feeling for the energy currents that flowed through the asteroid field. There, she said, pointing to what looked like a solid wall of rock. There's a passage hidden behind that large asteroid. But it's very narrow. Marcus didn't hesitate. He dove toward the hidden passage, the Wanderer scraping past asteroids with inches to spare. The Corvan pilot tried to follow, but his ship was larger and less maneuverable. He was forced to slow down, and by the time he found the passage, Marcus and Lyra were already through, and disappearing into the nebula beyond. They didn't stop until they were well clear of the asteroid field. Only then did Marcus allow himself to breathe again. "That was too close," he said. "They knew exactly where to find us, exactly how to trap us. Someone's been watching us." Lyra nodded grimly. "The hunter will not give up easily. He will come after us again, and next time he will be better prepared." "Then we need to be ready for him," Marcus said. "We need to learn everything we can about this collector and his people." As they set course for a safe harbor where they could gather information, Marcus realized that their peaceful life as cargo pilots was over. They were being hunted now, and the only way to survive was to become hunters themselves. But he also realized something else. The bond between him and Lyra had grown stronger during the fight. Working together under pressure, trusting each other completely, had deepened their connection in ways he hadn't expected. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as true partners. The universe had become a more dangerous place, but Marcus wasn't afraid. With Lyra by his side, he felt like he could face anything. 2 weeks after their escape from the asteroid field, Marcus and Lyra found themselves on Frontier Station, a rough trading post on the edge of civilized space. They had come here to gather information about their hunter, but what they discovered was far worse than they had imagined. "Harrison Vex?" said Jake Morrison, an old smuggler friend of Marcus. "Yeah, I know that name. He's bad news, Marcus. Real bad news. Word is, he's got a private prison somewhere out in the void, filled with rare aliens he's collected over the years." Marcus felt sick to his stomach. "What kind of aliens?" "All kinds, telepaths, shapeshifters, energy beings. Anyone with special abilities that he thinks are valuable. Most of them don't last long in captivity." Jake's expression was grim. "He's been hunting Valyrians specifically for years. They say he's got some kind of obsession with them." "How many has he captured?" Lyra asked quietly. 3, maybe 4 that I know of. But like I said, they don't survive long without their bonds to keep them stable." Jake looked at Lyra with sympathy. "You two need to get as far away from here as possible. Vex has resources, connections. He won't stop until he gets what he wants." But running wasn't an option anymore. That night, as Marcus and Lyra sat in their small rented room, they made a decision that would change everything. "We can't keep running," Marcus said. "He'll just keep hunting us and probably hurt innocent people in the process." "I agree," Lyra said. "But there is something else to consider. If Vex truly has other Valyrians imprisoned, we cannot abandon them. They are my people, the last of my kind. I cannot leave them to die." Marcus looked at her, seeing the pain and determination in her purple eyes. The bond between them let him feel her anguish at the thought of her people suffering in captivity. It made his own heart ache. "Then we go after him," Marcus said. "We find his prison and free your people." "It will be dangerous," Lyra warned. "Vex will be expecting us to run, not attack, but his defenses will still be strong." "Maybe that's our advantage," Marcus said. "He thinks like a collector, not a warrior. He's used to hunting helpless refugees, not people who fight back." They spent the next 3 days planning their assault. Using their contacts in the criminal underworld, they managed to track down the location of Vex's secret prison, a modified asteroid base in an abandoned system called the Graveyard. The journey to the graveyard took 2 days. As they approached the asteroid base, Marcus was impressed despite himself. Vex had turned the entire asteroid into a fortress, with weapons platforms, shield generators, and patrol ships guarding the approaches. "How are we supposed to get through all that?" Marcus asked, studying the defenses. Lyra closed her eyes and extended her consciousness toward the base. Through their bond, Marcus felt her mind touching the energy patterns around the asteroid. Then her eyes snapped open, filled with excitement and hope. "They're alive," she whispered. "I can sense them, 3 Valyrians, alive but weak. They're being held in the lower levels of the base." "Can you contact them?" "Perhaps." If I can establish a mental link, I might be able to coordinate with them. Lyra concentrated, reaching out with her psychic abilities. Minutes passed in tense silence. Then suddenly, Lyra gasped and her eyes filled with tears. I spoke with them, she said. Their names are Kira, Davin, and Zara. They have been prisoners for years, kept alive but slowly dying without proper bonds to sustain them. They are willing to help us, but they are very weak. What can they do? They can disrupt the bases, systems from the inside, create confusion, maybe even disable some of the defenses. But we would have to get close enough for them to act. Marcus studied the asteroid base, his tactical mind working. What if we don't try to sneak in? What if we make so much noise that they have to focus on us instead of watching their prisoners? You want to attack directly? Lyra asked, surprised. Not attack, distract. We make them think we're trying to break in from one direction while we actually go in from another. Marcus pointed to a section of the asteroid that seemed less heavily defended. If your people can create chaos inside while we create chaos outside, maybe we can confuse them enough to slip through. It was a desperate plan, but it was the only chance they had. Marcus piloted the Wanderer toward the asteroid base, broadcasting false distress signals and emergency codes to make it seem like they were a damaged ship seeking help. The ruse worked long enough to get them past the outer defenses. But as soon as they were within range, Vex's security forces opened fire. Energy bolts streaked past their ship as Marcus threw the Wanderer into wild, evasive maneuvers. Now, Marcus shouted. Lyra reached out with her mind, coordinating with the IPR ISO-NED Valyrians. Suddenly, explosions began erupting all over the asteroid base. The prisoners were overloading power systems, causing chain reactions that rippled through the facility. In the confusion, Marcus dove toward the asteroid's surface, finding a service tunnel that led into the lower levels. The Wanderer scraped through the narrow opening with inches to spare, and they found themselves inside the base's docking bay. Alarms were screaming everywhere. Emergency lights flashed red, and the corridors were filled with smoke from the internal explosions. Marcus and Lyra ran through the chaos. Following Lyra's psychic connection to her imprisoned people, they found the prison cells deep in the asteroid's core. 3 Valyrians lay in energy cages, their skin pale and dim, their bodies weak from years of captivity. But their eyes were bright with hope when they saw Lyra. Sister, one of them whispered as Marcus broke open their cages. We thought we would die here. Not today, Lyra said, helping them to their feet. We're getting you out of here. But as they turned to leave, Harrison Vex appeared in the doorway with a squad of armed guards. He was a tall, thin man with cold eyes and a cruel smile. How touching, Vex said. A rescue attempt. I should have expected that Valyrians would try to save their own kind. It's one of their most predictable weaknesses. Let them go, Marcus said, stepping protectively in front of the Valyrians. Your fight is with me, Vex laughed. My fight? Is with anyone who tries to take my property? Those Valyrians belong to me. I've invested years in keeping them alive. They're not property, Marcus said angrily. They're people. They're resources, Vex corrected. Valuable resources that I intend to exploit. Their psychic abilities alone are worth millions on the black market. That was when Marcus understood something important. Vex saw the Valyrians as things to be owned and used, not as living beings with their own hopes and dreams. It was exactly the kind of thinking that humans had learned to reject centuries ago. You're wrong, Marcus said. They're not valuable because of what they can do for you. They're valuable because of who they are. Through his bond with Lyra, Marcus reached out to the other Valyrians. He offered them what Bill had once offered Lyra, not ownership but partnership. Not exploitation but cooperation. The response was immediate and overwhelming. All 4 Valyrians linked their minds together, with Marcus as the anchor point. The combined psychic energy was incredible, far more powerful than anything Vex had ever experienced from his isolated prisoners. The energy blast knocked Vex and his guards unconscious and shorted out every electronic system in the base. In the sudden darkness, Marcus and the Valyrians made their escape. Later, safe aboard the Wanderer as they fled the graveyard system, Marcus sat with the four Valyrians and marveled at what had happened. "I felt all of you," he said. "Your thoughts, your memories, your pain, but also your strength. That is the true power of the bond," Lyra explained. "Not to control or exploit, but to share and strengthen. You showed the others that humans can be trusted, that we can form connections without seeking to dominate." Kira, the eldest of the rescued Valyrians, spoke up. "We have been alone for so long, we had forgotten what it felt like to be truly connected to someone. You have reminded us that our people can live on even if our world is gone." Over the following weeks, Marcus helped the rescued Valyrians find new lives. Kira bonded with a lonely engineer on a remote space station, finding purpose in helping maintain the complex systems that kept the outpost running. Davin connected with a trader who had always felt drawn to the mysteries of space, and together they began exploring ancient ruins and forgotten worlds. Zara found her match with a teacher on a frontier colony, sharing her people's wisdom with human children who had never seen the wonders of the galaxy. Each new bond was different, shaped by the personalities and needs of the individuals involved. But all of them shared the same foundation: mutual respect, trust, and the recognition that two different beings could become stronger together than they ever were apart. As Marcus and Lyra watched their friends begin their new lives, they realized that they had become part of something larger than themselves. They were no longer just a bonded pair trying to survive in a dangerous galaxy. They were the beginning of a new kind of relationship between species, a bridge between human determination and Valyrian wisdom. "Bill would be proud," Lyra said one evening as they watched the stars through the Wanderer's observation window. "Yeah," Marcus agreed. "He always said that the best thing about humans was our ability to make friends with anyone, no matter how different they seemed." "And what do you think is the best thing about humans?" Lyra asked. Marcus thought about it for a moment, then smiled. "We never give up on the people we care about. We'll fight impossible odds, take crazy risks, and go to the ends of the galaxy. For someone we love, that's what makes us human." Lyra smiled and took his hand, their bond humming with warmth and contentment. Together, they had saved her people and discovered that love could indeed bridge any gap between the stars. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and they had all the time in the worlds to explore it together.